if you're a politician in Jersey, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking in general, being in a small community like this, you really need to be a real prick to not do something for your community when you meet them on the streets all the time. You don't really understand us because you never work, let's say, in hospitality, you never work in, in agriculture. The question is, how do you make the right decisions if, let's say, you've never been exactly in their shoes? How is that communication going?
We hadn't had a policy, a strategy around tourism and hospitality for 20 years. In fact, you might even argue a bit more.
Hoping for the best kind of thing situation.
Over the last 20 years, there has been. When you set up a business, and I do believe this, you set up a business, the reward is profit, but what you're bringing as a business owner is you're willing to take that risk for the profit.
But is there something that the government could have done differently for the past, I don't know how many businesses that closed recently from hospitality area? Because I know there is a lot of blame. I don't feel like sometimes is the right way of doing it. I don't feel like government should solve all of our problems. But is there something that you think it could have been done differently for them to make it through?
Policy areas that I want during the 4 years that I hope I complete as minister is connectivity to Europe and better connectivity to Europe. And at the moment, our main way of connecting to Europe is through the ferries.
I think if you were to launch a poll now, to say, do we want something else instead of Condor? There will be a huge majority that will say, yeah, we want something else. But I don't know how it's going to be with other companies either. With so many things that you need to cover, how big of a priority is hospitality out of all these? Minister Kirsten Morel, welcome to Hospitality Insights.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Radu. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you.
It's amazing, and I'm really pleased that you could make it because I know you have a lot of eggs in your basket. We were just talking about earlier about the amount of almost areas that you need to cover with your role. Now, we choose our own destiny, so I guess, it's not point crying about it. Let's just do it. That's part of my philosophy almost. So you are the Minister of Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. But apart from that, you also cover agriculture, fisheries and digital.
Well, it all comes under the same banner. So I've changed the title actually. So I'm now called Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. And so not economic
because
development.
Because it got a bit too ridiculous in terms of length.
No, that's one of the reasons exactly. But it's also because sustainable ultimately means long lasting. And any economic development minister, in my mind, must be thinking about long lasting success and change for Jersey. If you're only thinking about the short term, then in my mind, you're not doing the job properly. You have to be thinking about short term, helping businesses with their challenges today, but you also have to be thinking about where's the island going in the long term, because it's that long term view for the island which will mean our success long after I'm no longer here, if you know what I mean. So you've got to think about the long term. But in sustainable economic development, as a kind of minister, I have responsibility for, yes, you're absolutely right, tourism, sport, arts, culture and heritage, retail and digital economy. And on top of that, there's a lot of kind of other organizations, whether it's the Office of the Information Commissioner, the Gambling Commission.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of those where I start
Luckily
thinking...
we're not gambling too much.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I start thinking I mustn't leave anyone out. But it's a really wide portfolio. I've got assistant ministers who help me. So it's not just me. And I'm really pleased. That's Deputy Scott, the Connotables of St. John and the Connotables of St. Helier, all helping me with different parts of that portfolio. And, between us, we kind of divide up a lot of work and get on with it. It's really good.
This is how it works. But, with so many things that you need to cover, how big, we're going to go straight into it. How big of a priority is hospitality out of all these?
Okay, so it's really is genuinely a huge priority. Last year I said it was our policy priority. And by that, it's the reason I said policy priority was because I wanted us to make sure we created that visitor economy strategy, which we launched last week. We created that last year with really, really importantly, we created it with the sector. So it was, hospitality representatives working with my officers to come up with that strategy. So the sector has already bought into it. But that was last year. That was the policy direction. And that's because we hadn't had a policy, a strategy around tourism and hospitality for 20 years. In fact, you
So
might
was it
even
just like
argue a bit more.
hoping for the best kind of thing situation?
Over the last 20 years, there has been, and we've had ministers who are really committed. The now chief minister, he was Minister for Economic Development before me, and he was really committed to tourism and hospitality. There's no question, but we just didn't have a strategy around it. And more businesses were talking to me and saying, we need direction. We need direction for the existing industry, but we also need direction so that investors who are looking at Jersey as a place to invest can have confidence that we believe in the hospitality sector, that we believe the visitor economy can fly. And we do, and I do. And so last year was the policy. We've done that. The policy is out there. You'll have seen it launched last week. It's, I encourage anyone to have a read. It's not just about tourism. It's not just about, restaurants. It's about the whole visitor economy together. Because coming to your question about the importance of it, you cannot understate the importance of the visitor economy. It provides us, it's because we have a good visitor economy that we have 10 flights a day to London. We have other flights to, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Liverpool, Bristol, wherever, all across the UK.
Then even the business area benefits from.
The business. So exactly, the finance sector benefits from that. If you lost the visitor economy in Jersey, you would then see fewer flights to the UK. You would then almost certainly see fewer financial services businesses in Jersey because our connectivity to London is vital for them. That's really important to them. Equally, you've got the agriculture and fisheries sector. Well, they tie in with hospitality perfectly. You cannot have a successful agriculture and fisheries sector without businesses in Jersey buying their produce and encouraging them to grow more quality crops and to catch more local fish. And so it all ties together. On top of that, you also have heritage, which is a really important part of this. And so heritage is a really vital part of attracting people to the island. So how do we, what does Jersey offer to visitors? Heritage, arts and culture are a really huge part of that, as well as the local beauty which of the island. So it is an ecosystem. And if you were to try to cut out the visitor economy and say, well, we don't need that anymore, I'm afraid you would see many other parts of our economy start to wither. And that's not a place I'm willing to go. So last year was about the policy. We've now got the policy out. This year is about delivery. It's about delivering that policy, and it's about investing in the sector. And we are investing in the sector in many, many ways. The new Opera House refurbishment, that's investment ultimately, which will help the visitor economy sector. The Elizabeth Castle is being refurbished. That's going to help the visitor economy sector. Jersey Heritage is now funded to a level that it's never been funded before. Again, that helps attract visitors to the island. The same with arts and culture. The same with sport. We invest in sport, and that helps. We see teams coming over. We see spectators coming over to watch those teams. So it all ties together, and there's no way you can take one part out and forget about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like the angle, when you said with the flights. I thought that that's actually quite a good one, which I never thought about. But have you ever gone into, I would say argument is probably a big one to say, where people say, well, you don't really understand us because you never work, let's say, in hospitality, you never work in, in agriculture, which I think is not necessarily something that's absolutely needed because you have even football coaches that never play professional football. So, and around the world, politics is the way it works. Like I know in Romania, for example, if let's say that you are an agricultural minister, it doesn't mean that you farm ever in your life. But it's also transferable skills or something else that you can bring to the table. But the question is, how do you make the right decisions if, let's say, you've never been exactly in their shoes? Yeah. How is that communication going?
Yeah. First of all, I'll talk about myself, politician. That's what I like to do. And so I think number one, like many people, I have worked in the hospitality sector. So I have cleared tables. I have been a waiter. I have been a kitchen porter. Yes, this was 25 or 30 years ago, but I've done those jobs. I've worked in restaurants. I've worked late. I've, been the sole kitchen porter in a really busy restaurant, not leaving till everyone else had left. And, the last guests had gone, the chefs had gone, everyone had gone. There's just me washing dishes that's left. So I have done those jobs. Okay. And I know how hard they are. I have a thing in my head. I think kitchen staff should be able to get tipped just as much as waiters and waitresses. Having done the kitchen porter job, True. I know how hard that job is and how it's unforgiving as a job. And but on top of that, I'm knocking on the door of 50 years old. I didn't I was first elected in 2018 when I was kind of 43 or thereabouts. And in the interim, I've worked in communications. I've worked with lots of businesses. My wife set up and ran and grew her own business. So I've not only done my own business, which was principally just me, I didn't have staff, but my wife has, and I helped her with her business. I know what it is to run a small business in Jersey. I've got direct experience of that, and I bring all of that to the table as well. And that's one of the reasons why when I am speaking to people in the industry, yes, I have never run a big hotel. I've never run a small hotel, but I do know what it is to run a small business and to run a business in this island. I know the demands on it. I know that the people working there are working 70-hour weeks. I know that a business owner puts everything into that business. They sweat and toil for that business. And so what I hope I can bring, whilst never having run a restaurant, never having run a hotel, is a deep empathy, if nothing else, and understanding of what it is to run business in Jersey. And that's what I hope, when I speak to people in their different businesses, I hope they understand that from me.
What are the biggest challenges these days? Because when you go to these meetings, you've been like to the Jersey Hospitality Association meeting, you go to the Jersey Farmers. Obviously, you do, yes, let's say your speech, people applaud or not. And then you go down to talk to them, individually every here and there, whether on the street. In hospitality, what are the people approaching you the most with, the biggest challenges these days, and what can the states do to a degree to overcome what they've got in mind?
Yeah, so biggest challenges, there are a whole list of challenges, there's no question. Staffing is probably the one that I get the most about, because I think it affects everyone. It is really hard. We are going, I do work with the Home Affairs Minister to try to make sure that the work permit system that we have, the list of skills that are enabled to get skilled jobs, is up to date. And I'll continue to work with the Home Affairs Minister on that. It is really difficult after Brexit for us to recruit as many people as we need to have. And we know this, but we mustn't stop. We do try to help businesses get staff in from overseas, but obviously they're further overseas than they used to be. And I was recently at a workshop with people from the sector, which is working with the immigration staff, the immigration officers. It was a really good workshop where, restaurateurs and hoteliers were able to express their difficulties, and immigration officers were able to express their difficulties as well, because we work, this is one area where we do work within the UK kind of system for immigration. And so it's not all in our gift, but there are things we can do. And I know our team at immigration are doing everything they can, and will continue to try to make it easy to get staff. Another aspect, which only affects certain businesses at certain times, but principally when they want to develop, and it is sometimes linked with staff, is around planning. And, that is often a problem. It's taking a lot of time to get through the planning system. I get business owners getting in touch with me for various issues, but often it will be, they want to buy a house, let's say, turn that into staff accommodation so that they can then have the staff to work in their hotel or their restaurant.
Bureaucracy
and there's a bureaucracy, and also our policies don't always make it easy for that to happen. And we've kind of ended up in a situation where the planning law has become so fixed that it's really difficult even for politicians and officers to find ways around it. But I do know, and I'm really pleased that the planning minister, Deputy Luce, is really focused on this. He really wants to help businesses, in fact, not just businesses, but all islanders, have a much more simplified and understandable planning system that they can work through. So those are probably the two biggest issues that I think politicians can help with. Then you've got other issues, which are things like cost of living, which just means, all the input costs into every business in Jersey have gone up. Therefore, prices have had to rise. That then puts stress on your customers, because can they afford it? And unfortunately, whilst we do everything we can to help with the cost of living, there isn't actually that much that we can do. And there aren't many levers we can pull. Interest rates are set in the UK; they're not set in Jersey, so we can't reduce interest rates to make that easier. We are very limited in that area. But we will help businesses, whether it's through productivity. We can help them. Jersey Business have great schemes about productivity improvement schemes that for any restaurant business, that will help them cut waste from their business, which will help them manage their costs a lot more. And then there's another side, which is investment. And we might get to it a bit later, but it's understanding what are the barriers to businesses, both locally and externally. What are the barriers to them investing in further business development in the island? Because that's something we really need to understand in order to get that business.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. When I talk about a business, well, although I don't own one specifically, I work in hospitality before. I think, well, the highest I got was head chef. And then is when you get to see, how much comes in, how much goes out. It's almost like owning your business to a degree, but not quite there. And I think the one of the most important things is accountability. As a business owner, I've screwed up, it's on me. I think we need a bit more of that in Jersey. But is there something that the government could have done differently for the past, I don't know how many businesses that closed recently from hospitality area? Because I know there is a lot of blame. I don't feel like sometimes is the right way of doing it. I don't feel like government should solve all of our problems. But is there something that you think it could have been done differently for them to make it through?
I mean, it's difficult without specific examples, but I would say, is there more we can do around staffing? Some businesses may be closing because they can't get the staff, because that reduces the amount of hours they can do. But I think the point you make is a really good one, which is, when you set up a business, and I do believe this, you set up a business, the reward is profit, but what you're bringing as a business owner is you're willing to take that risk for the profit. And so there is an element of, if it doesn't work, then it is really sad, and it can really hurt the person financially who set up that business. And that is, incredibly hard. But there is a reality that when you set up business, you are taking that risk on. I love that people do that. I really love entrepreneurs. I love Jersey, in my head, is an enterprising society and needs to remain an enterprising society. That means the reward for setting up a business has to be there. We have, for most businesses in Jersey, it's 0% tax. That really helps. But there's a high cost base to running a business. What I think we need to do is try to make Jersey, or certainly ensure that it remains a competitive place. What worries me more than anything is that Jersey becomes uncompetitive compared to other jurisdictions. So if I'm thinking about setting up a business, if I'm from outside Jersey and I'm thinking I'd really like to set up a hotel, where will I do that? What I fear the most is that people will look at Jersey and just say, it's just too expensive. Yeah. And that worries me a lot, whether it's, whatever the investment.
Yeah. And I guess this is already happening. Yeah.
And it does happen to some extent. But for those businesses that are here, I think the other side of it is when a business fails, to some extent, celebrate the owner. They've taken that risk. They've really put their life and soul into it, and it didn't work. So what we also need to do is make sure that we don't punish people for failure. And that when, this is something America does so well. When you fail in a business, people want you to get back up. They will help you get back up and get back on and set up another business. And you learn from your mistakes of the first time. And like you said, we all make mistakes. There's no question. In every line of work, we all make mistakes. I know I've done many mistakes. And what we need to do in Jersey is have a culture where, yes, a business doesn't work, but that doesn't mean that business owners shouldn't start again. And we must make it as easy as possible for a business owner to start again. Yeah, totally. And I feel like, that's probably the area that I think we need to push more towards, having a bit more, first of all, being a bit more accountability, it's a bit on us as well that certain things fail. And I'm not, this is generally speaking, because I'm sure there are certain areas, that probably they tried their best. It just wasn't working. But then it doesn't mean that you need to stop. And I feel probably with Jersey businesses, that's where they can help, bring you back on track. Or even to that point, maybe before you even fail, go to them and, seek advice. Yeah, you're absolutely it's free, right? That's right. Jersey Business, this is a plug for Jersey Business, but it's absolutely the right thing to let people know about. Jersey Business is there to help businesses who just want advice. It could be advice about starting a business. It could be that you're in the middle and you want to expand your business, as in you're in the middle of running a business, you want to expand, you need advice in expanding. But equally, it can be that things are getting tough, you don't know how to improve the situation, Jersey businesses are there to help you with that. And they will give you absolutely, as you said, free of charge. They will give you honest advice about how to do the best thing for you and your business. And so that's a really, really good resource. And all businesses in Jersey, small, medium businesses in Jersey are really welcome to use that. I just want you also said we're speaking in general terms. You're absolutely right. And it's really important that I say that, especially as a politician and a minister. When I speak here, I am talking in general terms. There are individuals who have run businesses where perhaps the government could have done something. Perhaps the government was one of the reasons why it didn't get going, if you know what I mean. And I really appreciate that. And that's something that I have in my everyday work, is I have businesses coming to me with those stories. And sometimes government can be part of the problem. But what I want is, rather than blame, it's about, let's help people get back on their feet. Let's help people start another business, because entrepreneurs, in my mind, are to be celebrated. And Jersey needs an entrepreneurial spirit. We're a tiny, tiny, tiny island, as you know.
It's the only way to survive.
It's the only way to survive. You've got to think on your feet. We've got to be out there. And, so one of my big worries is, and it's why the Barriers to Business report is so important, is we need to make sure that government enables businesses, it enables the private sector, and that government isn't in the way of it. Yes, government should be there to put the safety rails around, because you don't want people to be exploited. You don't want products to not be good enough, or food to not be cooked properly, or
we
things
don't
like
want to
this.
handhold the
But
businesses.
you can't handhold them, and you mustn't be in their way, because, it does worry me that people expect government to do everything. And I really, especially if you want to keep your 20% tax rate, I really believe that government shouldn't do everything. Government is just one institution. All these businesses in Jersey, and there are over 8,000 businesses in Jersey, all of them are their individual, bright, resourceful kind of institutions. And they can become amazing things. And they are amazing. And so I just really want to make sure that government has that right balance of protecting everyone, but at the same time enabling businesses to thrive. And Jersey mustn't lose that label of being an entrepreneurial society.
Now, we were talking about blame, and I kind of like this because I always feel like whenever something goes wrong, I look at what I could have done better. And I feel like we need to start from there, but that's a different story. What I want to talk in terms of blame, it's also that the hospitality sector was kind of like saying that, the alcohol increase was one of the big issues that happened, for the past, I don't know how many months. And why was that done? Was it basically because, we need more money for the government? Was it because we were concerned that, too many people are drinking? Was the actually truth in that?
So, as I was around the council ministers' table when those decisions were made, there was no question. My colleagues who were in favour of having a rise in the alcohol duty, it was from a public health perspective. They weren't being driven by tax for the Treasury. It was about public health. And so there were ministers who felt really strongly that Jersey has an issue with drinking. I think in the kind of OECD rankings or EU rankings or something, we rate second behind Estonia or somewhere for the amount of alcohol per person, which isn't a great place to be. It's, I accept that. It's not great. Excessive alcohol consumption causes a lot of problems. Social, individual, familial, it can be a real problem. But alcohol drunk properly can also, we've all had great times with friends and parties and the rest of it, which would perhaps not have been quite as good without a bit of alcohol involved. That's the truth of it. And so, and alcohol really is important to the hospitality sector. There's no question. So I absolutely pushed back and said, no, this, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, isn't the right thing to do. But with that, council ministers at the time, the public health message won over. And but there was pushback. And it was, in my view, predictable pushback, and I was pleased that we went to a halfway point and kind of
because it was meant to be higher apparently. Than
it was going to be 9%.
Yeah,
it's now 4.5%.
That would have killed quite a few businesses probably.
It would have been tough, exactly. And so I was pleased that we came to that compromise. It hurt my department's budget quite significantly, but that's the other side, because there was less money. The flip side of it is we now have less money as a department to invest in in the sector, which is a shame. But I would say that actually, when you think about the fact that all these individual businesses are now able to, not pay that tax, and their prices are able to be kept slightly lower, I would hope that the economic benefit that outweighs whatever would have come into my department. The extra kind of £1 million that my department would have had.
The reason I'm asking is because I remember Marcus Calvani saying that, was there some sort of study? How was this decided, basically?
Like I said, you'd have to speak to those ministers who were really coming from that angle. I don't agree with that angle personally. I don't think that just putting the price higher and higher and higher is going to really reduce drinking very much in Jersey. I don't think it does that at all. And again, when you speak to Marcus and you speak to other people in the hospitality sector, they point out, I think quite correctly, that actually all you're doing is, is driving people out of the bars and restaurants and into the supermarkets to buy their alcohol to drink at home, where they don't have a manager or a barman looking after them, making sure they don't get too drunk, because it's against the law to be drunk on licensed premises. So it is the job of the hotelier or the licensee to make sure that the people on their premises are not overly drunk. Obviously at home, they're not able to do that. And also it means that people are then coming from their homes into the bars already drunk, which is really difficult to police and manage as well. So I've got, I personally put a lot of stock in that argument. There's another angle, which is if you just keep using price as the mechanism for reducing alcohol consumption, if you are to succeed, it will only be because the price goes so high through taxation that only wealthier people can drink. Because, imagine a world where it's £100 for a pint of beer.
Then you'll have some sort of black market where people...
And you absolutely would have that sort of black market. Exactly. So for me, logically, it doesn't work either. This idea that you could end up in a world where it's so expensive to drink that only the wealthy can drink. Well, like you say, that's going to cause a black market. It's going to cause resentment. It's going to cause all sorts of other things. So I personally don't subscribe to this idea that price rises are a strongly effective public health tool when it comes to alcohol. They can be a part of it, perhaps, but I just don't think they should be seen as the main way of dealing with that issue.
Connection to France.
Yes.
Let's go into that. So the connection to France and the freight prices, which I remember at the end of last year, there were some sort of conversations to increase by, was it Ferry Speed saying that by 19%, which was, you found that ridiculous because, it's not even close to the 10 or so, 11% or whatever the inflation was. So I thought, this is kind of unacceptable. Let's have a conversation. Where are we with that now?
Yeah. So connectivity, and actually I'll go back a little bit to your very first question, which, when we talked about the importance of the visitor economy for connectivity, the other part is connectivity to Europe. I talked very much about the UK, but one of my big kind of policy areas that I want during the 4 years that I hope I complete as minister is connectivity to Europe and better connectivity to Europe. And at the moment, our main way of connecting to Europe is through the ferries. Now, there's no question I was really concerned about the price rises that were going on to freight from the ferry operator. I know that we are in this cost of living crisis, and that affects businesses. And, there's no question that all the pressures that have come to bear from around the world are putting the cost of fuel up, the cost of parts up, the cost of labor up. There's no question every single business in Jersey or that serves Jersey has seen price rises for their input costs. But it just seemed
a bit
too far, if you know what I mean. But I also understand that, I do know that keeping ferries running is a really expensive business. There's no, anything you stick in the water, in the seawater, needs a lot of TLC and a lot of
and
cost.
It's unpredictable as well.
It's really unpredictable. Obviously, we're coming out. We mustn't forget, COVID was only 2 or 3 years ago.
They got a big hit with that.
It got a massive hit. Got a massive hit with that. So I understood perhaps where the company was coming from, but I still feel and felt like it was probably too much, and certainly, like you say, has that knock-on impact to all the goods that we buy in Jersey, whether it's in hotels or shops or restaurants, it doesn't matter. If the freight costs go up significantly, then that comes through to all of our prices and affects the cost of living. We're in the process at the moment where we're, basically tendering for ferry services. So That's
trying to find alternatives or competition.
Well, competition. Well, not competition on the routes. We will have one ferry service provider, but competition at the point of, at the point of the tender. So, at the moment, we went to a request for proposals, effectively seeking out interest in the market. Are ferry companies interested in serving the Channel Islands? The answer is yes. We've had several of them come back to us. We're now moving into that stage of actually, right, now you need to tender for it. This is what we're looking for. These are the services we're looking for. The existing provider, as I understand it, is also going in to that tender process, which is brilliant. But we've got other providers who are also tendering for it. And so that will then give us the ability to look at those proposals and seek which is the best for the Channel Islands. And I'm really looking forward to that. It's not me who makes that decision. It is a kind of fair tender process. It's taken out of political hands, which is the right thing to do. We're doing it with Guernsey, which is fantastic. And I'm really pleased. I've been working with my counterpart in Guernsey. It's quite a strange situation, but up till now, the contract for ferry services has only been from Jersey. So Guernsey hasn't got a contract for ferry services. So it's actually a really strange situation where it's only Jersey that kind of holds a contract. And
so they get to the table now as well.
Exactly. So it's bringing them into it, definitely, because they are, at the end of the day, Channel Island ferry service providers. It benefits all of us. So it's going to take, a number of months through this year to get through that process. But at the end of it, what we should have is the best possible ferry services for the islands. Like I say, we have more than one company tendering for this as far as we can see. And that's great. So that's where the competition is. That means the existing provider will, be looking to provide the best possible proposal that they can. But these competitors will also be looking to provide the best one that they can. And it will go through the mix. Officers from Jersey and Guernsey will look at it all and come out with a preferred bidder at the end of it. So that's going to be something to watch. But there won't be any news for a few months yet.
I think if we were to launch a poll now, to say, do we want something else instead of Condor? There will be a huge majority that will say, yeah, we want something else. But I don't know how it's going to be with other companies either. I only know, since I've been in Jersey, I only know Condor as the main provider.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it would be without them. Yeah. Could it be better? Could be no. Yeah. I guess it'll be in the fine details for you to check and make sure that we choose what's the best for the island.
That's right. I mean, and things I am personally hoping to see come out of it are, like say, better connectivity to Europe. So, I went to France in St. Malo for work. Sorry, I went to France in November for work. I was traveling to St. Malo. That's where the conference was. I was going to a conference in St. Malo. I had to travel to London, to Paris, TGV from Paris to St. Malo. So in order to travel 60 kilometers in November, I had to travel 1,030, Google told me, because I couldn't get there by ferry. And to me, that is massively limiting the island. That is a huge limitation on our hospitality sector, the visitor economy sector, because basically we can't get visitors to Jersey from Europe in the winter. That to me is not good enough. Equally, we can't, as islanders, travel to Europe in the winter so easily. We have to get a plane to London, etc. And that's one of the problems I'd love to see solved by this tender process. The other thing is freight from Europe to Jersey. At the moment, you mentioned freight prices earlier. At the moment, we have one freight route. It's from the UK to Jersey. That's basically it. I really want to see us have two. From Europe, from St. Malo to Jersey, from Portsmouth to Jersey. And the reason for that is twofold. One is resilience. At the moment, if something goes wrong between the UK and Jersey, then we have real problems with food. And so if you have two routes into the island, you're much less likely to ever get cut off. And the other side is just choice. And that includes price. If you have more than one route to Jersey, then we can get the best of prices from the European market, the best of prices from the UK market, and that should hopefully provide competition on price for islanders, which will, you would hope, over time, limit price rises over time.
But is there need for this? Because I feel like, it's also going to get into an area where, we might have some of these, going empty. Is that going to be subsidized by the state? How does it work? Is there enough, because obviously these companies, once they win the contract, they need to be profitable. Otherwise, they'll finish their contract and they'll never look back. So do you think that there'll be need for them, to or for the island to increase these routes?
It's a really good question. We haven't, Jersey, to my knowledge, in my lifetime, we haven't subsidized kind of ferry services, except perhaps during COVID. But even then, I won't, guarantee that we provide anything. So we are not used to subsidized services. I don't foresee that we will subsidize services, but it will be interesting to see what comes through in this tender process. We might have a number of companies all saying, look, we can put on these routes, we can do this through the winter if you pay X amount to make sure that, there's a level of profitability there. The other element of freight is quite simply that if we have freight coming from the south, then Jersey businesses can start doing more business with our neighbours in Brittany and Normandy. I think that's really important. We've become cut off from this whole economic region of France. And I think that's to our detriment. They're the people that it's easiest for us to trade with because they're the people who are closest to us. So again, in my view, we need that kind of year-round ferry service in order to enable that to happen. It doesn't have to be necessarily daily, but at the moment it's just too random. In the winter that is. In the summer it all works really well. And I want to help us get over that. And part of it, coming back to the visitor economy, is part of the attraction for ferry companies or plane companies is if we build out the shoulder months. If we have visitors coming here in the autumn, in the spring,
how
in
can
the
we
winter.
make Jersey interesting during that time?
So that's where the arts and culture sector comes in, the sports sectors come in. That's events. You saw in February, we had the Lunar New Year and we had Dreaming Trees. 2 events, not expensive from a government perspective, but they not only kept islanders really happy and gave them something to do, thousands and thousands of people enjoying both. In the middle of February, we all know there's not usually a great deal to do in the middle of February in Jersey, but suddenly you had stuff to do. People loved it. It opened up town. The thousands of people on the Sunday in town for the Lunar New Year. Well, if the shops are open, they can benefit from that too. The restaurants benefit from that.
Yeah, it's a chain reaction.
Exactly. But then you also start getting visitors coming here because that then becomes a week where there's a number of events going on in Jersey. That becomes known. We market that to people. And then we can start seeing, greater visitor numbers. With greater visitor numbers, ferry companies and plane companies will be more able to put on more routes. And so it is this kind of virtuous circle, but you have to kickstart it. And I believe you always have to start with the infrastructure, because if the infrastructure is not there, you can't get here full stop. So you start with the infrastructure. In this case, that's the ferry services, and you build up from there. Because once you got those services through the spring, autumn and winter, then you can start marketing them, to people who don't live far away. Like I said, Somalo's 60 kilometers away. Normandy's kind of 30 kilometers away, less than that, 25 kilometers away. These people are close. We just need to attract them here.
Now we're moving on from ferries. We're going underground. We're talking about the tunnel because, some people feel like, what's this crazy idea, tunnel? And I don't think there is a question about how much Guernsey, how much Jersey would benefit from this, because it's huge. It's absolutely massive. And I strongly believe this. But, okay, there are a few, people are worried about something like migration, how we're going to control that and so on. But I still feel like those are quite manageable. Once we get that tunnel, I feel like that's literally the least worry that we probably have in mind. But what's in it for France? Because that was my main question. I not that I'm a non-believer, because I like to see that done, and I think it would be huge, for everything, not just hospitality. But what's in it for France? Because I feel like it needs to work. This needs to work together.
Yeah, coming closer to Jersey, that's in it for France. If I kind of backtrack a bit again, is the whole tunnel piece. And the reason I'm really pleased, the Chamber of Commerce, Hospitality Association helped as well on the night before, that I'm really pleased they have got the conversation started. And this fits in with conversations about wind farms and everything else. Jersey has a real economic challenge, more than on the horizon. It's right in front of us. It's just kind of 15 years away, and it will get worse and harder each year and it is
older
just
population.
It's just the older population. It's, and people say, oh, there's nothing wrong with old people. Of course, I'm, like I said, I'm knocking on the door of 50. I'm part of that older population. It's like,
but who's paying for
15 years time? I'm 65 and I'm retiring, and exactly. And so that costs money. There is a truth about that. You then have fewer people in the workforce, and you have greater healthcare needs and social care needs. That's what happens in an aging population. we cannot avoid that situation without genuinely looking at it, accepting the challenge, and then thinking of ways to deal with that challenge. Now, there are basically different ways of dealing with that challenge. One is you just open the doors to thousands of people to help keep your economy growing and growing and growing. That's been the economic model for the past 20 years. More people come to Jersey, the economy grows. Productivity, of course, goes in the opposite direction, because actually the economic growth hasn't been sufficient to kind of make productivity increase over that time. In fact, productivity has decreased over that time. But we all know very well that we're a tiny island, and that pretty much it seems quite settled that people don't want huge amounts of population growth. So that's fine. If you don't want huge amounts of population growth to make sure you've got an economy that can support the older population, what are your other options? Well, one option is, all right, we just keep the existing population, but we tax them much, much more to pay for the healthcare and social care. Well, I have a funny feeling as people watch, tax bills rise and rise and rise, that will then put people off living in Jersey in itself and drive people away, and you'll end up with a shrinking economy. So in my view, that's not a route you want to go down. So the other option, we know we'll need more people because we do need a growing economy, and it is difficult in healthcare and social care to deliver some of those services without actually having people on the ground. There is another element to it, is it possible to commute to Jersey on a daily basis? This happens in Geneva, this happens in Monaco, this happens in Gibraltar, it happens in many other places where you have a kind of commuting population coming in and out of the city. So can that happen here in Jersey? That's the question we're looking to answer. We're looking at it from a ferry perspective. Could you have sufficient ferries, with people coming in? That's one way. But the other way is a fixed link. Is it possible to build dig a tunnel? I guess you don't build it, you dig it, and finance that. And so have a fixed link, which would enable, not just a kind of commuting population to Jersey, but would also enable much greater amounts of tourism. It would also massively relieve the housing crisis in terms of, if we need thousands more people coming to Jersey, even if the population said, yes, let's have them, we're okay, we don't mind thousands more people in Jersey, it's going to put massive pressure on housing, which means that you'll then end up with a housing spiral, which we've all been living through, and we know how difficult it's been to now. It would only likely get more and more serious as time went on. So for me, all I want to do, and this is so genuine, is just have that conversation. Look, we have a real challenge. We have to face up to that challenge as an island. This is one way of dealing with it. Now, there are potential negatives, which are, are we truly an island after that if we have a fixed link? In my view, I think we are, because, and I look very much to the Channel Tunnel between the UK and France. The UK is still very much an island. And from a migration perspective, as you said, well, you can really control migration through a tunnel.
Yeah.
The UK has, we all see the headlines.
It'll be a lot easier than over the sea.
Precisely. But the UK has the Channel Tunnel, but the migrants in the main don't go through the Channel Tunnel. They're still going via the sea. So I don't see that a tunnel would be an issue for migration. But your question was, what's in it for France? And I believe that much increased economic activity is in it for France. La Manche, which is the area, if you were to have a fixed link, it would be to La Manche. La Manche has a good economy, but it's an economy which isn't among the strongest areas of France. So it has room for economic growth. Having people who are of working age living in France, kind of increasing that population a little bit, would create more economic growth. I believe you would get tourism to La Manche with the view of coming on to Jersey as well. So I think there's a lot of real economic benefits for France. But that said, none of this can happen unless France is on board. And at some point, we have to go to France in a very serious and earnest way and say, look, these are our plans. If we get to the stage of having plans, do you want us to explore this further? Are you happy to come on this journey with us? If they say no, then obviously it can't go anywhere. It's that simple.
It's just a dream.
But exactly. But first of all, we need to have that conversation. And I've said this before, and I will absolutely say it again. Given the demographic challenge that I know we have, and given that we know a tunnel is feasible from an engineering perspective and it's feasible from a financial perspective, I think it would be negligent of me as Sustainable Economic Development Minister to not ask the question, is this something the island is interested in? If the island says no, that's fine. That's no, it's fine. We'll have to look at the other possibilities. But to not ask the question, not have the conversation, I think would be me doing a disservice to the island in the long term. And so I know people laugh, but it's a really serious question. And I think it's a question that we need to get to and address in all seriousness.
But how do we know if what the islanders want? Is it going to be some sort of vote, or how do you think, the decision is going to be made?
Well, the decision would have to be made over a number of stages, I think, and it would ultimately be made in the States. As in the local decision would ultimately be made in the States. But there are many different ways. Politicians, all political decisions, are made in one way or another in conversation with the island.
But I guess you are also elected by the people.
That's
so
what I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just trust me. It's like we as politicians need to speak to our constituents. We are there to represent people, so it's really important we speak to people. Now, I think on this, we'll have probably a more structured conversation. I would like to go out and speak to islanders very much in their parishes, etc., about what is this? What am I talking about? Why am I raising these issues? So I will be doing that over the coming year or so, and that feedback will come back to us. The media are already engaged. We've seen the media last week discussing this question seriously. The media have a really important role to play, to get a serious sense of what does the island think. We are, as politicians, all of us, in constant conversation with islanders, but it's really important that this sort of question is spoken and discussed by all islanders of all ages. And I think we need to think a lot more about our children and our grandchildren and the island that they are going to grow up in, and the need for that island to be vibrant, to provide careers for them, to make them want to live here, to not be so expensive they can't live here. For me, that's the kind of guiding light, is what do we want to leave to our young people? Because if we're not leaving an island that has a really strong functioning economy, then it's going to be really difficult for them to choose to live in Jersey, and I want them to choose to live in Jersey.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about long term. And I have something that I always say. I talked to my wife a while back, and I said, if you're a politician in Jersey, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking in general, being in a small community like this, I know it's going to sound probably a bit weird, but I'm like, you really need to be a real prick to not do something for your community when you meet them on the streets all the time. Like, you meet them on the streets and you get people saying, that why this is not done. Why? And I'm sure you probably go nice sometimes and think like, I wish I could do more. So I doubt that, people don't want to do stuff here because it's just really hard. I might be a bit delusional. And I'm not talking again about you. I'm talking in general as a politician. When you're part of that small community and not trying to do something good for it, I just feel like, it's deadly. I don't think it happens. I like to believe.
But you're right to believe. So I say this for all politicians in Jersey who are here today as politicians, who have been politicians and who will be politicians in the future. I have not yet met a politician in Jersey who does not care deeply for the island and is not trying to do the right thing in their minds for the island. They all are coming from the right place. Where the divergence is just in our views on what the right thing to do is. So there will be some who say no tunnel, using that as an example. There'll be others who say yes, let's have a tunnel. That's where the debate comes. But the debate needs to be healthy. It needs to be honest. It needs to be focused on the facts, not lifted up to just emotion and kind of scare tactics. I'm thinking of Brexit type referendums. That was the worst of debates. There was nothing in there was factual. It was all about emotion. It was all, for me, the Brexit referendum in the UK was a car crash of a debate. The media played a terrible role. Politicians played a terrible role. It just fell apart. And the results were, in my view, terrible for the UK. So in Jersey, we need to have good, open, honest debates. You are absolutely right. Every politician in the States Assembly cares deeply about the island and is trying to do the right thing. You can disagree with them and you can tell them that, but do so nicely. There is no need to dehumanize or demonize politicians in Jersey because we all live on this island. I won't be a politician one day. I will be a man in the street again. And I will, be amongst everyone just living my life. I already am. That's what I do. I am just a person.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things is that I sit there and I say to myself, but I'm just Kirsten. I grew up here and I'm just trying to do what I think in my head is the right thing for the island. So when the abuse comes and when the nastiness happens, you are sitting there going, what? Why? Everyone here is trying to do the right thing. I might disagree with them. They might disagree with me, but we're not being nasty about it and we're not being horrible about it. So, we do very much live amongst the community. It's one of the beauties of Jersey's democracy. I'm not protected by bodyguards. I'm not whisked away in a limousine. I'm not, in some kind of ivory tower. I'm speaking to people every day in the street. And some of the most important conversations I have are in the street. I speak to businesses, I speak to people. And all of us do that. So I'm just babbling now, I think.
Yeah,
but we are real people in Jersey just trying to do our best.
But do you feel like some of the failures, because sometimes, let's be honest, there are failures.
Absolutely.
We all know.
We all fail at some point, and all institutions fail at some point.
Do you think that there's also a downside of this? Because as a politician, that people know you, like genuinely know you, on the street, it was like, oh, how you doing, Kirsten? Everything, family good and everything else. Do you think that there is also more pressure for you or for the government to do something bold?
That's a really good question, really interesting question. The pressure to do something bold, I think at the moment, comes from the demographic challenge that we have. So actually, in some ways, I would say because the people are here and I'm very much seeing people every day and, they talk to me every day, in a sense, there's pressure to not do something bold. But especially as we don't have a strong party system in Jersey. I know we've got Reform and they're a good party and a strong party in that way, but the other 39 of us are all independents. And so I think that in itself makes it harder to be bold because you don't have a kind of bigger party structure around you, which you can set out your platform on really easily. So it does become hard to ask the bold questions. And if I may be so bold, asking the tunnel and the wind farm questions are really bold things to do. But I think that demographic challenge ahead of us is so strong and so big a challenge that if we don't put the bold questions to the population of Jersey, then we're failing the islanders.
Totally.
So bold is really important, even if it doesn't go beyond discussion. At least I will be able to say to my children, well, I asked the questions. The island said no, but at least I was bold enough to ask the questions and I tried my best to ask those questions. And I got the answer the island wanted at the time.
How is our relationship with Guernsey? Because one of the conversations, I listened to a podcast, which was very interesting, but the only part that was missing was, again, what's in it for France, which I thought for me, from my point of view, it's something quite important because eventually if this goes ahead, we'll need to work with them, to make it happen. So how is the relationship with France? And I'm not talking about the tunnel specifically. They were actually worried, by the way. I'm not sure if you heard conversations that, Jersey might do it without us. So there is a bit of that from what I heard in Guernsey. But how is the relationship with your counterpart, in terms of hospitality? Because one of the conversations I heard a while back, I'm talking like a few months back on the Jersey Hospitality Association side, is like, why not make Channel Islands as a destination? How is your relationship with them? Do you think that's something that could be done? I guess the tunnel will completely solve that issue and it will definitely happen. Yeah. But till we get the tunnel, do you feel like that's something that can be happening?
So I have a really good relationship with my counterpart in Guernsey, Deputy Inder. He and I, I was thinking while you were talking, I was thinking, maybe I should text him now and just ask, how's our relationship? I don't know if he'd get back to me in time, but hopefully he'd say good.
Just to make sure they don't say something.
Exactly. So with my counterpart in Guernsey, Deputy Inder, who's president of the Economic Development Committee in Guernsey, he and I get on really well. For various reasons, we're actually in regular contact for work at the moment as well. But I'm really pleased he and I have a really good relationship. I feel I can kind of speak to him about any subject in our areas, and that's where you need to be. I think there is difficulty in working Jersey and Guernsey together. There are difficulties, and that's ultimately because whilst our islands are really similar, we do have different needs, and we do have different aspirations, and we do have different populations that have different ambitions and want to go to different places. So from my perspective, I think there is a big piece of work to do over years. This will far outlast my career and me, which is, I think we should start talking more about the Channel Islands. That ferry company contract, just being a Jersey contract, is a really good example that, we weren't doing that as a Channel Islands, even though it's clearly whoever had the contract was clearly a Channel Islands provider. So I'm really pleased. It's one of the pieces I'm working on with Deputy Inder is on, this tender process and ultimately awarding a contract for the Channel Islands, not just for Jersey. But we need to find those areas where we can work on easily together, because there are different needs. There are different things. We know Guernsey doesn't have GST. Recently, they tried to bring it in. States decided not to. Jersey, we decided back in 2005 to bring in GST. It's been really important to us from a tax perspective. It means that our government, isn't struggling in terms of raising taxation.
Are they in a worse situation from this point of view financially?
As I understand it, now don't get me wrong, I haven't looked at Guernsey's books,
yes,
but everybody's told me Guernsey is in a difficult place financially. That makes it more difficult for us to work together on some of the really big issues or
big projects,
big projects, not because they're in trouble financially, but because, or difficulty, I should say, not trouble, but because it means that they perhaps have different priorities to us, as a result of that, or they can do things in different ways to us. And so I do think we can get to the point one day of possibly even being, having a kind of Channel Islands framework where there's a federation with the two bailiwicks within it. So I think we can, I think we should, because I think, scale is really important in this world. That's not going to change. Even if you combine all the Channel Islands, we're still only 167,000 people or something. That's so tiny. Yes. We often forget that is so tiny. It's a tiny number of people. But we've got economies which are much bigger than the number of people in our islands in terms of, if you go to a town of 167,000 people anywhere across Europe or the UK, you won't find an economy as big as ours combined. We're talking £8-9 billion between 167,000 people. That's quite amazing. So I do think one day we should, and we probably will get there, but I think it's bit by bit, step by step. And ultimately it's because we have differences. We have, I think, difficulty sometimes in understanding our own aims, objectives, but I'm working on the ferry tender. I'm working on the lottery together with Guernsey. And there are other areas that other ministers are working on. So bit by bit, we are bringing it together. And I think one day we could be doing Channel Islands marketing. I think, there is a reality. The rest of the world sees us as the Channel Islands, not as Jersey or Guernsey or Alderney or Sark. We are the Channel Islands. And, I hope that over time, those barriers will be broken down. And, maybe tunnel, if there's one from Jersey to France and one from Guernsey to Jersey, I think we'd do a huge part of that. But equally, better ferry services. Again,
infrastructure will be the main thing.
It is about infrastructure.
You did say at the beginning, which
exactly. When I was a kid, I could get easily a ferry from Jersey to Sark. Today, it's so difficult to get a ferry from Jersey to Sark. So whilst our population has increased, our connectivity has decreased. And that's the kind of thing that I want to reverse. And I know in Deputy Inder, I've got a counterpart who feels exactly the same. So I know that's why we can work well together on these sorts of issues.
Now let's touch on technology, because you also touch a lot of, part of your job is a lot of that. Yeah. And now we see, AI going wild, fear of missing out for certain businesses, probably the whole island of missing out. Where are we heading with this? We probably to a degree don't know. How do you think technology is going to impact hospitality and maybe even the island, going even outside for the coming years? Where should we be heading with this?
So technology already is impacting, the hospitality sector. And going back to that demographic challenge, part of the way or the main way we are seeking to reduce the need for population growth, we won't be able to stop the need for population growth, but we can reduce the need, is by increasing the productivity of businesses in Jersey. And technology plays a massive role in that. Now, interestingly, hospitality is an area which over the last few years has had significant increases in productivity. So 2022, I think productivity in the sector was £46,000 per head. So everyone who worked in that sector was creating £46,000 worth of value. Just the year before, I think it was £44,000. So that was quite an increase just in 1 year. And if you go back to before COVID, because obviously COVID was COVID and for hospitality was awful. Yes. If you go back to before COVID, I think it was more like £38,000 in 2019. So from 38 to to 46, with COVID in the middle, that's significant increase in productivity. And I really celebrate and thank the sector for doing that. Technology can help take that even further. But there is also a reality about hospitality, which is, the personal service element of hospitality is the human touch. I appreciate that. You appreciate that. We all appreciate that. But we see it, particularly in hotel, I think, in the hotel and the self-catering area. We know there's growth in self-catering. The Les Sablons development down on Broad Street, part of that is a 100+ bedroom self-catering apart hotel from Wild. And that's going to be really important because, again, we see it also with Premier Inn in Jersey.
They run on minimum staff,
exactly. And if that's the product you want to buy, then we need in Jersey to have it. And obviously people do want that. They do want, I've been on plenty of holidays where I have self-catering. I don't have waiters and waitresses. I'm just...
I guess they're two different sides. If you're coming from business, you probably don't really care that much. You want a room, you want your breakfast, get on with the day.
Yeah.
If you're coming for a holiday, it all depends actually. What are your expectations?
Different people want different things, and Jersey needs to offer that range of things. And so technology, and I know there are restaurants in Jersey using technology in really exciting ways. Another good example is I think down at the war tunnels, they're using a booking system now for their visitors. So I was speaking to Tim from the war tunnels, and he was saying that when they looked at their business over the years, basically people visit the war tunnels on rainy days. Yeah, you can't go to the beach. So in the middle of August, if it's raining, they go to the war tunnels. And I live near the war tunnels, so I've seen the car park on a rainy day. It's overflowing. But what wasn't happening was, but then on a sunny day, no one there. And so by using a kind of booking system, and kind of encouraging that to happen by offering discounts if you book online and things like this, they have been absolutely able to kind of spread that out. So if it's a sunny day, but you had booked it, it's much more even. So it's much better for them. They don't have these peaks and troughs. They have a much more even flow.
Probably more predictable as well.
Absolutely more predictable. They can then see how many people are coming. So, if not so many people are coming on a particular day, maybe they can ask a staff member not to be there that day just because, it cuts their staff costs for that. I don't know. That's me speculating. I don't know how the war tunnels manage their staffing. I don't profess to know. But that was a great use of technology. It means that they are now much more able to see, their demands and spread out the demand in a way that makes it easier for them to manage, which means they then provide a better customer experience, which means people will recommend it more and people go back and so on and so forth. So there's a huge role for technology to play. Obviously AI is in the spotlight at the moment. We don't know where it's going to go. I've read books about the singularity. I know.
Do you try to it feels like it's very recent, but it's moving so fast. Do you try to keep up to date so you can make the best decisions for the island? How does it work? Because I feel like it's 100 miles an hour.
It is 100 miles an hour. And so the answer is yes and no. I used to write about technology. And
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but one thing I realized was technology moves at 1,000 miles an hour. So it's really hard to keep up with unless you're focused on it all the time. But also technology suffers from hype. Oh my goodness, if there's one industry which suffers from hype, it's the technology industry. And so, and I think we're in that with AI. There is no question artificial intelligence is going to change many, many things in our world. It will change employment markets. It will change the way we do jobs. I totally agree with that. But the time frame that will happen in will probably be longer than the time frame people are talking about at the moment. I think a really good example of this from personal experience is cloud computing. Mm-hmm. Back in 2006, 2007, I was doing a lot of writing about cloud computing, and I was, everything that was being written was how it's here. If you're not on it, you're going to lose out. Absolutely right. It made it feel like you had to do it now. Yeah. And if you're not clouded up by 2008, then your business is going to fail. The reality is it took another 10 years before.
And there's still people that still
absolutely not every business is there. Exactly. Not every business is there yet. And I would suggest businesses it is worth looking at, but it took definitely at least 10 years. So it was more like 2016
to build that trust as well.
To build the trust, exactly, before it was really taking off and before businesses were really thinking, this is where I need to go. So we do always need to be aware of the kind of the tech hype cycle. they always make it sound like this, that if you're not in this by tomorrow, you're lost. It's not true. But there is a reality. You can't stop the train. The train is in motion. It's going to happen, but it'll probably just take a bit longer than they're making out. is my take on it.
Yeah.
So we need to stay on it. Artificial intelligence. Well, again, there's a truth here. ChatGPT, etc. That's not true artificial intelligence. That's machine learning. It's actually, it has no true artificial intelligence would perhaps have some clue of what it is doing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, this is piling up all the information.
That's all it's doing. It's just pattern recognition. It's basically looking at the pattern of text you've put in, and with the enormous amount of information that it's kind of been loaded up with effectively, it's able to pick out the right pattern of text to give you the answer you want. It has no sense of what that text means or does. And so even the way we describe today's kind of AI, I think we're slightly overselling it. It is machine learning. It is quite amazing. You think back to when I was playing Atari games in the 1980s, it's a million miles from there. And in just kind of 40 years, which is really impressive, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, I guess we should keep an eye on it. We don't want to kind of like be left behind with this.
And experiment with it.
Yes.
I really encourage businesses to experiment with it. There's no question. I want to experiment with it. I've already been asking many questions to ChatGPT almost to catch it out. What does it know about Jersey's laws? More than I'd have thought. Is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, there is a fight. It is going to go, if we said 1,000 miles an hour, I think they're just about to increase the speed. Google is obviously in the fight. And, we don't want to get into a full technology conversation because, most of the hospitality guys that are watching this will be like, okay, this is not for me.
Yeah,
at least not for now.
Well, I wouldn't be able to go into that full conversation because, again, I used to write about technology a lot. So I was looking at it every day. Today, as a minister and as a politician, I don't have the time to keep fully up to date in the way that I was before. So, my job is to have a general understanding and keep basically up to date with where technology is going, to understand the potential implications, both good and bad. And I hold that really to my heart. Data protection is one of my areas. Cybersecurity is one of the areas that I work with Deputy Scott in both those areas as well. They're vitally important to the way the islands move forward. We need we need islanders to be safe with their data, and we need the islands to be safe from cyber attack, etc., etc. But there's also opportunities there for us. Can the islands be in the way we are with finance? Can we benefit from? Can we benefit? Is there a market? They keep telling us data is the new oil, but the trouble is, it's the big tech firms, the big US tech firms, that are the ones benefiting from that oil at the moment. That data is your data. That data is my data. And I do believe there'll be a future in which we are being paid for companies using our data because, the Googles, the Facebooks, the rest of it, in my view, they are taking huge advantage of us and they're exploiting us. But I think the tide will turn. And I do wonder if Jersey can play a really key role in that and benefit economically as well from that.
Yeah.
But you're right. Our hospitality sector might not be too interested in that conversation, so I'll stop it there.
But it's also true that we need. I think no matter in which sector you are, I think you should have some sort of understanding of what's out there. Even if, let's say, you're not gonna use it, right now. See if you have a benefit. Even now, like I use it, for example. I'm Romanian. My writing is not amazing. Yeah. So, trying to get the right sentences, sometimes I'm like, I feel like I can get these better. It makes sense, but it could be better. Well, a bit of AI sometimes helps.
Definitely.
So there are situations like that, which are very basic. Obviously, for everybody out there, make sure you don't share very sensitive information with ChatGPT, but that's a totally different conversation to have about security. Now, what can we expect from Minister Morel in the coming years? What are the plans?
Okay, so the plans are,
even if it's shorter, very short term, or like medium or long.
In theory, I've got 2 years left before the end of this term. We're going back to election in 2026, so that's kind of the only length of time I can kind of count on. Obviously, I could leave this job or be sacked from this job. I accept that, but in my head, I have to think 2 years. What can you do in 2 years? Really focused on this breaking the barriers to business. I really focused on bringing Jersey into that entrepreneurial place where we believe in ourselves and believe in ourselves in a way that we can take on the world. It's kind of, and I truly believe this. I grew up in Jersey as an islander, believing that I could set up a business, build a business, run a business. My dad's phrase that he always used to say to me, the world is your oyster. And I truly believe that for every person in Jersey, we can achieve all sorts of great things. We need technology to help us do that, because that, again, technology extends the island's capabilities beyond the 45 square miles. In the short term, it's also helping businesses, break through the problems that they're experiencing. That's the barriers to business side of it. In the long term, it is that future economy program. It is about building the economy of the future that will mean our children, our grandchildren choose Jersey as a place to live. I think we're in a really good place from a government perspective at the moment. I've got a team. It's not a big team, but I've got a team where we have people from the private sector. So my team have basically all worked in businesses. They know. So Olivia runs, our hospitality section. She's been in the hospitality sector for the last 20 years. That's exactly where she's been working. So she understands, she gets it. Retail, Charlotte in retail. She's been working for some of the UK's biggest retailers for years. She's now here in Jersey, helping us with how she understands it. She gets it. That runs through John, who's there with agriculture. He's been a farmer. It's like he knows what it is. So these are people. I am working with people who truly understand the sectors. That makes such a huge difference. And I'm really proud of them, and I'm really proud of the work that they do. And it is about that balance of dealing with today's problems and helping businesses through those problems, whilst also taking us forward into that future. We can do that. There's a huge part which is also going out and speaking to the island. So not just about tunnels or wind farms or whatever, but engaging with islanders in order that they understand. I do worry that people kind of think, they're just saying that. This is about the demographic challenge. They're just saying that. It's just politicians. No, we're not just saying it. It's there in the population pyramids. It's real. It's there. Our workforce is going to decrease if everything else remains equal. If we do nothing, our workforce is going to decrease. Our retired population is going to increase. It just doesn't add up. That way, if we do nothing, that way leads to a declining economy. It ultimately leads to poverty. I do not want the island to go there at all. And so, I need to, and I will be going out, speaking to as many islanders as possible and helping them understand. They can then come with different thoughts. This is how you solve it. This is what you should be looking at. Brilliant. That's what I want. We've got 103
spark all these ideas.
Spark ideas. We've got 103,000 islanders, all who can contribute to this, all who have their ideas. And that's what I love about enterprise is you have an idea, you go out and set up your business and do that idea. Now, business doesn't have to be always just about profit. It could also be you set up your social enterprise because you want your organization to help socially rather than make a profit. That's a project which is ongoing at the moment. How do you make it easy for people to set up social enterprises? Ultimately, I want children and young people in Jersey to grow up believing that Jersey is a genuine option for them to stay here and live their lives. It is really sad. It really hit me in the last election because I started saying it in the election. I realized, damn, this is true. I'm one of kind of 7 cousins, if you know what I mean, all born in Jersey. We've all got degrees. And this includes my sister as one of those people. We've all got degrees, so we're all well educated. Jersey paid for that education, And
they left the island.
I'm the only one left. And that's not good for the island. I know that's just one family, but I know that's been repeated in many places.
Oh, no, absolutely.
That's something I really want to change.
I talk with the young generation like every here and then because I'm curious. I'm just a curious person. And I ask, what are your future plans? Especially when you are 18, 20, it's like, well, I want to go to Australia. And then that's the main thing. Most people want to go, not that much UK. It seems like Australia is the heaven for some reason. But hopefully you can turn that tide, make them stay here. Probably even for my children and the generations to come, because I feel like it's great that at least in theory there is a vision, to beyond you, which I think is the way it should be. Because if you only think about the 2 years or the then, it's very hard to have
that to me is not
continuity.
the job. You know, I would be letting people down if I only thought about these 2 years. What I would say is also, I have to caveat what I just said with, I also appreciate how good and important it is for young islanders to go off and see the world. One of the things in Jersey is you do need to see the world. You do need to go. It is really good. I've lived in France. I've lived in Slovakia. I've traveled, pretty much all the continents except Antarctica. It is really important for our own good as individuals, but also as a community to see the world around us.
But I guess the importance is
them wanting to come back.
Yes.
That's the bit. And I'll be honest, I grew up in my teens. If you asked me when I was 17, will I be living in Jersey when I'm 49? I'd have said not a chance. And I accept that. I would have said that. And sure enough, I did everything I could at the time to go away. But I did keep coming back, and like I say, I did live abroad. I loved it. I studied abroad, lived abroad, worked abroad, absolutely loved it, learned from it. But I came back here because I love the island. And, my wife is from Jersey. We've grown up here. We've now got a daughter. And she's, looking at her future now. And I really hope that in her head, she wants to go away, there's no question. But I hope in her head that she will always know that, or she will genuinely believe that Jersey is an option for her to come back. And I think, we do have a real sweet spot. It's a great place to have a family. It really is. And I think that's something we need to be, again, show much more confidence in. And you might spend, let's say, your 20s living outside of Jersey. If you're born in Jersey, brought up here, you might go off and spend your 20s somewhere else. But when it comes to that thought of, do I want a family? Where do I want a family? There aren't many places that are better than Jersey to have a family. And I believe, the safety is incredible. The fact that you can live an outdoor life is incredible. Distances aren't long. So if you finish work, it's not a 2-hour commute to get home to see your kids.
I love this.
One of the big motivators for coming back to Jersey, because after university, I did stay in the UK for a bit, but I was commuting an hour each way every day. This only lasted about 3 months before I thought, why am I here? Why am I spending an hour on a bus each way every day when I could be at work in 15 minutes if I was back at home in Jersey? And actually, then I lived at First Tower. So I used to walk along the beach to work. From First Tower to St Helier, and it's like, how many places can you walk along the beach to work? And that's when it was kind of like, Jersey is an amazing place. And,
oh, no, absolutely. There's no question about it. And I feel like probably for people coming from outside, like I'm coming from Romania, I'm sometimes, I wouldn't say, well, sad is probably a big word, but I see, in people that are born in Jersey, the generation that is born here, they don't appreciate it as much as, someone coming from outside, which I think always happens, whether you go in the US, migrants there will appreciate more than people from the US, I think, and so on. But I would like to see a bit more love for the island, probably for people, for generations, that were born here, and you have some sort of heritage behind. That'd be great.
I think people do love the island who are born here, but I think familiarity can cause you to start thinking, surely everywhere else is better. We have that phrase, 2 phrases: familiarity breeds contempt, which is the idea that if you see something all the time, you then start disliking it. And the other one is the idea that the grass is always greener on the other side. And that's, again, why it's important to go away, because in the main, the grass isn't greener on the other side. Jersey is a great place to live your life. What I want is to make sure that we have the careers, the range of careers, interesting, exciting careers, that will keep young islanders thinking about Jersey as the place for them. And that's why it's so important to have arts, culture, hospitality, finance. I'm really pleased today that, I think we've got the startings of a medical technology kind of research and development cluster in Jersey. That's absolutely brilliant. We have, a wind farm will provide jobs as well on the island. We have different careers. Then it absolutely makes young people begin to think, I could go away, get my degree, I could travel for a bit, I could work abroad, get better experience. But I know I can come back to Jersey and be an actor, or I can come back to Jersey and be an engineer, or I can come back to Jersey and work in finance and have my family and so on and so forth. And so for me, having that range of careers, and like you say though, but thinking positively about the island is so, so important. It's an amazing place. Let's not forget this. Not many places are as good as Jersey. That's true. Both economically and socially, we have a tight community. You think about America's probably the best place to think about it. One of the things that the American economy is built on is this mobility of people. I may be born in Cincinnati, and I may start my career in Cincinnati, but then there's a job comes up in Austin, Texas, so I move to Austin, Texas. Well, that's left my parents 4,000 miles away and blah, blah, blah. So I only now see them once a year. And the community, it must be tough in places in America because they just, families are spread over thousands and thousands
of miles. They move because of taxes. They move because of
all those
laws
things
that are specific to the state.
That's right. Whereas here, you've got your neighbors, you've got your family, you've got your friends. They're all here and they're so easy to see and visit. And, I'm proud of the fact that my real closest friends are the guys I went to primary school, nursery school with. Actually, one of my friends I went to nursery school with. I went to secondary school with these guys. These are still my closest friends. And even if I did go and live abroad, and as I did, I come back and they're still my closest friends. And so I don't think that's replaceable. That's something which is really special.
Yeah, I'm glad that we left this on a positive note. And I hope that, as much as you can do, you're going to keep this island the way it is, or even make it even better.
Yeah, no, I hope so. We must speak a bit more about hospitality, I have to say, because I think we've forgotten that bit of it, which is, ultimately, hospitality in Jersey is vital. If I want to sum up, it's vital. It has a really strong future. Visitor numbers are good. I know people have been deriding them, but actually we had COVID that killed tourism. Visitor numbers have picked up really quite well. Per capita spend from our visitors is higher than it was before COVID. We've got fantastic hotels. We've got fantastic restaurants. We've got fantastic apartments to stay in. Obviously, beaches, the beauty of the island. We have events happening. We've got everything we need to take the visitor economy to even better places. What we're going to be trying to do is attract investment. We want to understand what attracts investors to the island, what will enable investors to come to the island, particularly in the hotel space, because we do need to pick up bed numbers, in my view, because
absolutely.
Again, if bed numbers fall too far, then connectivity starts to fall away. But the other side of it is understanding the blockers to existing hoteliers or people in Jersey who are already running hotels or would like to, set up a hotel. What is it that's making it difficult for them to invest? And I know there are some structural things that make it really difficult for them to invest. And so we're working with them to try and unlock that investment, because again, I think once we've got that investment in the island, when we see it flowing in again, people will then begin to realize more clearly that this is a really vibrant visitor economy, and I think we will see a lot of that over the next few years. I mean, we do have Les Sablons I mentioned. There are other hotels. I think there's possibility for more Premier Inn investment in the island. I think we also have sites like La Folie, which is owned by a state-owned company down at the harbour. I think that could be really good for the hospitality sector. And so I know that Ports of Jersey are kind of moving on that. We've even got things like Fort Regent, which could be quite interesting from a visitor economy perspective.
Is that going to move in any good direction?
I really hope so. Because again, that was something that made us stand apart from other places. It's up there on the hill. Every visitor looks at it and goes, "What's amazing. That?" And so we need to make sure there's something in there to keep. It
looks amazing from down here, but then that's
it. It has lost its way over the years, and so we need to get that back in place. And I know there are plans to do that, and I'm really pleased with that. Bring town up. I think there are parts of town which could do with a bit of a facelift, and I know the infrastructure minister, the Constable of St Helier, and myself want to really focus on bringing town up, because again, that will restore confidence in islanders, but also for visitors, it will make them even happier to be here. So I think I think we are going to see a lot of positive changes and improvements, let's say investment over the coming 2 or 3 years. Longer, I hope it lasts longer than that, but I think we will start to see some real investment, which will, I think, create that positive feedback loop where investment breeds confidence breeds, more exciting, possibilities in the island, which creates more confidence, more investment, and so on. So I think, I know we have a really good future ahead of us.
Minister, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed, we went in all sorts of areas. We went from hospitality to technology to, part of your journey, getting here in the position where you are, which I think is amazing, because I do believe that hospitality is a journey on its own, and it's great. And we could talk a lot more. It's such a big subject and vast. And I hope that, at some point we'll get you back and continue this conversation, because otherwise we can be here for hours and still not finishing. And I'm sure there will be people commenting, well, why you didn't ask this? Why you didn't do that? Well, I'm sure if they leave some comments at some point, we'll get you back and then we'll discuss further.
I'll be really pleased to do that. I really love a chat. There's nothing I like more than a chat, to be honest with you. This is the way I loved it. If I could live my life like this, just chatting to people, it'd be perfect. It's like on the sofa.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.